And now joining us, the writer for the Warriors at the San Francisco Chronicle, and also the greatest Auburn Tiger I've ever met, CJ Holmes. What's up, dog?
Always got it on.
What's up, y'all? Thanks for having me, man. Good to see my family out in Phoenix.
Hell yeah. Good to see you too, man. Let's start with this. Chris Paul. We know that he's with the Warriors, at least for now. I don't know. Something else might happen. We'll see. We'll get to that in a little bit. But your initial reactions to Chris Paul coming to the Warriors, and how do you think he's going to fit into their system?
I think it's a good fit if managed properly, if that makes sense. Chris Paul's one of the best point guards to ever do it. And one of the Warriors' biggest issues last season was managing that second unit, staying competitive when Stephen Curry had to come off the floor. They got good minutes from Jordan Poole in spurts, but that inconsistency from him really crippled that unit at times. Warriors would build the lead, second unit would come in, and all of a sudden that lead would evaporate. So the whole theory in my mind with Paul is that, assuming that he comes off the bench, that stuff is still kind of up in the air. The guy has never came off the bench in any game he's ever played in his career. But I do think on this Warriors team, he's a better fit coming off the bench. The Warriors had the best starting five in the NBA last season, by advanced metrics, right? That's not the issue. The issue is those reserves. So you can get a guy like Paul who can come in, lead these reserves, get guys like Jonathan Kuminga and Moses Moody easy shots. In theory, the Warriors become a better team. So from that standpoint, I think it's a good fit. If he does wind up starting, we'll see how that plays out. I know you said we'll get into it later, but who are you going to take off the floor in that situation? Is it Andrew Wiggins, one of your best perimeter defenders? Is it Kevon Looney, your best big? Who knows? Either way, it would put the Warriors at a disadvantage from either a rebounding standpoint or a size defensive standpoint. We'll see how it plays out, but I do think the Chris Paul addition is a good fit, assuming that he comes off the bench.
Just to be clear, okay, I need to go back to this. All right. I know Chris Paul, he'll say all the right things, but do you truly believe he's going to accept a bench role?
I don't know. I remember when we talked to him for the first time out in Vegas, a few reporters floated that, those loaded questions his way. Chris, are you willing to accept the bench role? Chris promptly responded that, are you the coach? Right. And I don't know, just from my perspective, it seems like Chris, guys with these egos, right? It's what makes them great, right? It's what makes Chris great. That belief in self, but a guy in his situation, 38 years old, has played in less and less games over the past 3 seasons, is now entering, probably one of his last best chances to win a championship. You think the answer to that question would be, I'm willing to do whatever the coaching staff asks, right? However, that's not how he responded to that question. He did state that a lot of that stuff will be ironed out during training camp, and camp set to begin this Tuesday.
AKA, I ain't letting that shit happen.
It'll be interesting to see how it all plays out. But from, most people who are looking at this situation, it comes across as, or their perspective seems to be that the Warriors become a better team as long as, a little asterisk, as long as Chris Paul is willing to accept a reduced role. And it makes more sense. It just makes more sense, at least from my perspective.
That shit sounds like, I'm sorry to bogart this real quick, but that shit sounds like when my sister would be like, hey, mom said we can't have any ice cream today. I'm like, I'll wait and see what dad says. You know what I mean? Like, oh boy.
CJ, from your perspective, if things go south, if Chris Paul doesn't get the starting role that he wants and it doesn't go well, we've heard the Drew Holiday rumors. Is that a sensible swap in your mind? What do you think about that possibility, or is it too soon to be looking ahead that far?
Holiday is a perfect pick. He's like a perfect fit to what the Warriors want to do. And if this Damian Lillard deal went down earlier in the offseason, perhaps we're having a different conversation right now. But as it stands right now, bringing in Drew Holiday just doesn't make much sense from the Warriors, more so from a financial standpoint. One of the biggest factors in trading for Paul, offloading a Jordan Poole, is to offload Poole's contract. You bring in Paul. I think he's guaranteed around like $30 million or something in that range this season. then next season you can get him off the books. You can waive him without any penalty. If you bring in a guy like Drew Holiday, he has a team option he has a player option, for like $37 million next season. And all of a sudden that's on the Warriors books, and that's counterproductive to what they're trying to accomplish to make sure they duck under the NBA's second tax apron. So although I believe that Holiday on paper is a better fit, especially considering the fact that he's 5 years younger than Paul. He's a better all-around player, I would say, at this point in his career. And he remains one of the premier perimeter defenders in the league. I do think that he would be a better fit for the Warriors on paper. However, they've already committed to Paul. They have, coaches, execs, they've went on record, propping this guy up, saying how good of a fit he's going to be with the Warriors in the system. And to go back on all of that and to flip him just days before the start of training camp, or, perhaps maybe something happens a little further down the line, it just doesn't make much sense to me at this point.
Probably going to want to flip him before the playoffs, but that's just my opinion. Real quick, Klay Thompson, a little bit of ups and downs. It looked like he rebounded, more significantly last year, obviously getting more into a groove. What are your expectations on him? And really overall with this Warriors team, obviously if you look at the last 8 years, a lot of wear and tear on those bodies, playoff performances and such. How worried are you that they can still maintain that Warrior level of championship level play for the long haul? Because it did seem like last year they kind of tailed off towards the end of the season, and they just didn't have it, especially in that second round series against the Lakers.
Well, the new NBA rules designed to deter load management certainly doesn't help. It feels like that rule is more so targeted at teams like the Warriors more than most. So how they manage their players in order to keep guys healthy will be very, very key for them throughout the season. There won't be a lot of opportunities for rest for those guys. So that's just something that Rick Celebrini and the training staff, they're going to have to figure that out and find the best way to keep these guys healthy for the long haul. In terms of Klay Thompson specifically, it's been nothing but good things. I've been hearing nothing but good things about Thompson his offseason. This is a guy who I remember last year in Japan, they held him out of the first 2 preseason games. Matter of fact, I don't even think he played until late in the preseason. He said he had a mental block that prevented him from playing pickup basketball over the summer, coming off of those 2 devastating injuries. Throughout the year, he wasn't even cleared to play in back-to-backs until later in the year. But despite all of that, Klay Thompson led the NBA in three-point makes last season with 301. He had one of the best Januaries he ever had in his career. And there were times last year, multiple 40-point games. I think he even went for 50 once. So Klay Thompson still has plenty left in the tank. And considering that he's coming off of an offseason where he has been able to work out in full force, where he has been able to play those pickup games, to me, that's all good vibes for him coming into this year. It's a big year for Klay. It's a contract year. And General Manager Mike Dunleavy Jr. has expressed his interest in, being able to bring Klay Thompson back, find a way to extend him. And those negotiations are reportedly, ongoing at this very moment. So it's a big year for Klay. I think all things are pointing towards a more consistent year for Klay. And because Klay hasn't made an all-NBA team or an all-star team in the last 3 seasons, he isn't classified as a star player under those new rules designed to deter load management. So Klay will have more opportunities to rest more so than a Stephen Curry, than a Chris Paul, than a Draymond Green, than an Andrew Wiggins. So all the factors are pointing to a strong season for Klay. It'd be interesting to see if he can take advantage of it.
I can't wait to see Klay slap Steph on the butt and say, "Hey, get out there. Get out there. I'm going to sit right here. You get out there."
CJ, so the big 3 still intact, but obviously the Warriors made a lot of changes to the rest of the roster. We've already talked about Chris Paul, but there's another former Sun on the Warriors, Dario Saric. He joins Rudy Gay, Corey Joseph. How do you see some of the new guys fitting in on this team?
Well, in terms of the Warriors are only expected to carry 14 players on the 15-man roster this season. They've recently signed Rudy Gay and Rodney McGruder to non-guaranteed deals. We'll see how that plays out. If that last spot were to go to one of those two guys, I would more so lean in the direction of Gay, simply because that gives the Warriors more depth, more true depth at the three than they've had in recent seasons. Takes a little bit of the pressure off Andrew Wiggins, in my opinion. In terms of Dario Saric, it's another guy who's a perfect fit on paper. He's a respectable three-point shooter, high basketball IQ. He's a guy that you can see fitting into the Warriors system and that read and react system. He's a smart passer. And, last season in Oklahoma City, he was a lot better than he got credit for. I think he dealt with some injuries. Please correct me on that if I'm wrong. But, this is a guy that, when he's on the court, he's usually been pretty good when healthy. And now he's going into, arguably the best situation schematically he's been in since his time in Phoenix. So, it's in terms of depth, you lose Jordan Poole this offseason, you lose Dante DiVincenzo. That opens up more minutes potentially for a Moses Moody to have more of a consistent role than he's had in the past. Moody's minutes have always fluctuated, but when he's been on the court, he's been pretty efficient. Now you add in a guy like Chris Paul to get him easy shots, and maybe that can help him take that third-year leap. But I think no one on this Warriors roster is expected to see the most improvement. It's Jonathan Kuminga, right? Jonathan Kuminga. This is a guy who's shown flashes throughout his first 2 years in the NBA, but hasn't really put it all together. This is another guy that the coaches are raving about, that he's had a strong offseason. You think about that 60-point game that he had at the Jordan Crawford Pro-Am. And then you got a guy like Chris Paul coming in. Chris Paul loves to throw that lob pass, and when it comes to lob threats on the Warriors, Jonathan Kuminga is as dangerous as it gets. One of the most athletic guys in the league. So when you look at this Warriors roster, they have the pieces. The starting five is intact. Not a lot of question marks with those guys. There are question marks on the bench. The team is hoping that Kuminga and Moody can take that leap. Dario Saric is expected to fit in on paper, but will he actually? They're still trying to figure out what they're going to do with that 14th roster spot. And then you got the rookies, Brandon Pajemski and Trace Jackson Davis. Question marks as well. Pajemski had struggled in summer league play, at least in terms of shooting the ball. We'll see this preseason if that was more of a blip, or if he's a guy that's going to be able to help this team this year, or will he see more time in the G League with Santa Cruz? I do know that the Warriors are very excited about Trace Jackson Davis out of Indiana, who they acquired in the second round on draft night. I watched him out at Summer League. I loved what I saw from him. He didn't play until the final two games, but I loved what I saw from him. More athletic than he gets credit for. Great in pick and roll, and that bodes well considering Chris Paul is now on this team. And we're just going to have to see how it all fits together.
I like how you laughed after that. Just to kind of summarize it up, the Warriors still a top 4 team in the West. I don't think that's disputable. Like that's warranted. But what do you think? What would you predict would happen with them this year?
I think top 4, top 3 is very realistic for this team. Last year, they were arguably the best team in the league at home. Their issue was winning on the road. And that was their biggest issue, was winning on the road. And I just don't envision this Warriors team being as bad away from Chase Center as they were last year. If they won, just check my math on this, but if they went 500 on the road last season, they would have been a top 3 seed, top 3-4 seed. So they clean that up. Clean up that second unit stuff. Hopefully Chris Paul is able to accept and thrive in whatever role he's given. And if everything fits together the way it should, the way coaches hope it should, then the Warriors will be contending for a championship this year.
Suns Warriors playoff series. Who's winning and how many games?
Ooh. Well, we'll get a little preview on opening night.
Yeah.
We'll get a little preview on opening night at Chase Center. Kevin Durant's first game in San Francisco since he signed with Brooklyn all those years ago. It's going to be exciting. The Suns are doing a lot of exciting things on their roster with the new ownership and bringing in a Bradley Beal. to play alongside Devin Booker and Kevin Durant. So, that's another team on paper that looks really dangerous. And the Suns also did a great job this offseason with limited money, being able to fill out the rest of that roster. And I know they got a little bit more depth by shipping out DeAndre Ayton, bringing in Nurkic, and a few more other pieces to help fill out the back end of the roster. It should be interesting. With all that said, I feel like the Warriors have more chemistry. Right? No. The Suns have plenty of chemistry. By the time the playoffs roll around, but Curry and the gang aren't getting any younger. They'll probably be as motivated this season as they've been, entering any other season. I'm going with the Warriors in 7.
All right. Warriors in 7.
Right.
Okay. We put him on the spot, to be fair.
I was about to say certified bucket, but he kind of missed right there at the end. So we'll just let it go. That's CJ Holmes. You can follow him on Twitter at CJ Holmes22. It's forever Twitter. It's not X. I don't give a shit about X. So CJ, thank you so much for joining us, bro.
All right. Thanks for having me. Love y'all. I'll see you guys soon. See you opening night.
Yeah, he'll be out there.
I'll be
night,
out there, man.
sure.
Yeah.
All right. Sounds good.